This is True Crime Kent.
Hello, welcome to True Crime Kent, brought to you by 1159 Media, based out of Idaho. I am your host, Kent-chungus, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, the Operator. How are you doing, Op?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. By the way, I would be doing them a disservice by not saying that also joining us, as always, is our producers, Jessica and Chase. Jessica, how are you doing? Fantastic. Fantastic. Chase, how are you doing? Fantastic. Fantastic. It's a nippy 42 degrees and rainy here in Kentucky today, so curl up with a nice cup of Java and listen to the story that I've brought for you. It's a story of betrayal and murder and lies. The story of a woman that would end up with several nicknames by the time she finished her travels through history. The Indiana Ogress, the La Porte Ghoul, the Mistress of the Castle of Death, Lady Bluebeard, Hell's Princess, and Hell's Bells. Or Hell's Bell, I'm sorry. There's a reason for many of those nicknames, mainly because she was built like fucking Shrek and looked like somebody that you would see in a viral video on Twitter screaming, "It's ma'am!" at an innocent employee at a least famous recipe for misgendering them, and that's despite the fact that she was actually born a female. That's right. Today we're talking about that big old bitch named Belle goddamn Gunness, a real whopper linebacker of a woman and a murderer to boot. Hey, Op!
Hey!
What's the manliest woman you've ever met?
Oh, boy. I can't say because she's recently jettisoned from my
And I know the listener
family.
can't see, but Jessica just pointed at herself.
No, I can't say because she was part of my in-law lineage, and she's recently been booted. But anybody that knows my family is being like, I don't know, that could be any one of 3 or 4. So I'm safe in saying that, but the most manliest, dudeliest female that wasn't trying to be a dude, I can't really talk about her.
Okay, that's fair. Well,
it's not good for podcasting.
when I was working construction, I worked with this lady that absolutely scared the hell out of me. She just made my penis so tiny. Just her aura scared me. I was only 18 at the time, and she had an even much better mustache than I did. She dipped, cussed like a sailor, dressed like a Leonard Skinner tour bus driver, and could run a jackhammer for 12 hours straight without breaking a sweat, all while making some of the most foul jokes imaginable and putting even the toughest men around her in their place without even stopping the jackhammer. She was a badass. Even though I had grown up in Kentucky, she was the first woman I'd ever met like this. I'm obviously not going to say her name because I like her, but I ended up being friends with her, and she taught me a lot of valuable skills that I still use to this day. Things like proper usage of tools, how to work in concrete, drywall, but most notably, how to rip a man's throat out without making too much noise.
Wow.
She was a badass, and I thought she was terrifying. And there was another redneck dude that I worked with on the construction site. He talked like it right here. Talked like Boomhauer off King of the Hill. And he always tucked he wore cowboy boots, and he tucked his jeans into the cowboy boots.
Wow, that's fun.
And he was, God, he was hot. Something about her made him hard. He loved that woman. He loved that woman. And I would imagine if those two having sex, you ever been laying in bed and you hear two cats fucking like a block away?
Yeah.
It would be that sound, but with a mullet on it.
The sound had a mullet. That's a visual.
And if they started fucking like from her vagina, that it would just start playing the solo from Freebird.
Gross.
Anyways, let's get started, shall we?
We shall.
Like I said, we're talking about Belle Gunness today, and for this episode, I read 2 books. One is called Hell's Princess by the wonderful Harold Schechter. we've read several Harold Schechter books for TCK episodes. He's the Mac Daddy of true crime books, I would say. His books are always straightforward, fact-based, and he does his homework. He always has. So if you come across the book written by Harold Schechter, go ahead and read it because it's going to be a banger.
Just a little plug on that. If you want to check out some books by Harold Schechter and you're already on Audible, there's a whole series of Harold Schechter books that were written by him that are free on Audible. So check those out. And then that might wet your whistle toward, his other, he's got a crazy one on Ed Gein.
Yep. Deviant, I believe it's called.
Yep. Deviant. Yep. He's got so many. It's amazing.
Maybe like a quarter of our TCK episodes, I read a book by Harold Schechter, at least one book by Harold Schechter for the episode.
Yeah.
He really is. He's amazing. The second book I read was called The True Story of the Slaying Mother by a man named Jack Rosewood. And it reads like an 8th grade essay. Lot of misinformation in it. I would say that reading the book hurt me having to write this outline more than it helped.
Did it come like printed on 8.5 by 11 and comb bound?
No, it was actually like 180 pages, but most of the information was incorrect.
Oh,
so
gosh.
I would write the outline and then I'd have to go through and then fact check all of the stuff that I wrote, which isn't something you should have to do for a book that's based about history. And then my third source, I got those two books, then my third source for this, which probably for this episode, more than any other TCK episode, was old newspapers. Really got a lot of good information from ancient newspapers for this.
And are you still using newspapers.com for hunting those
invaluable research?
Crazy tool. Hey, let me ask you really quick. When it comes to research and you read a lot of books for your episodes, is it very common practice for you to finish a book, use it in your research, and then go and leave a review on Amazon of that book based on, you're like, this was garbage, everybody has to know, or this was really good? Do you ever?
Absolutely not. I am not the kind of guy that leaves reviews for products.
You should leave one for the guy that wrote the garbage Belle Gunness book, though. I kind of feel
it's not bad enough to try to hurt him financially.
Fine.
It seemed like he tried his best.
Darn it.
So,
that's what a lot of people say about 911 Calls podcast too. So I can understand. I can relate.
It's just, it wasn't, good on him.
Yeah. That's what they say too.
It ended up hurting me a lot because I ended up, that's not true. Oh, that's not right.
And that's you knew it because you already heard it somewhere else and you were confirmed. Yeah.
Well, the way, if you're wondering if you're the listener, this is fascinating stuff. The way I write an episode is I'll have the two books open simultaneously and I'll read them at the same time, linear, like the way, so I'm adding the information to my outline while I read both books at the same time. And I keep on track, like timeline wise, to a certain point where I'm like, this is the end of part 1. And then after I have the outline for the two books, then I'll go into newspapers.com and start fact checking everything and getting dates and specifics and stuff. So
do you find, I sorry for all the Q&As, but there's some interesting stuff here. Do you find that when you're reading articles from the past about these things that there are less errors than you would find in a modern stack of articles about a topic?
I don't know about that. No, I wouldn't say that. But I will say this about old articles. One of the reasons I love doing old cases for TCK is because the old newspapers gave so much more information than newspapers today do. Like if a guy commits a murder-suicide, he kills his wife and then puts a bullet in his head. Today, a newspaper is like, so-and-so passed away at his home after killing his wife on Tuesday. Burial will be blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But in 1899, they're like, Randy used a .38 revolver, put it in that bitch's mouth and blew her fucking brains all over the cabinet. The cabinet was blue. By the way, we found bone fragments in the kitchen sink. And turns out the dog, because we didn't know how long, they'd been dead for like a week, the dog ate their noses off. And this is at the address 413 Reddit Avenue. And by the way, their cousins are this. They were this old. The decomposition was pretty severe. They're just very, very detailed in the old newspapers. I love that. Like, there's nothing left out, whereas today we kind of try to water it down and sensitize it.
Part of that's by design because now the newspaper is selling ad space. They're not selling articles. That they're not there to. So too long of an article actually encroaches on the ad space on that page, and so they need it to be a certain length. Also, it's not worth, an article lives or dies based on its like virality or its clickbaitiness. So if it's not doing well, nobody cares.
Yeah, I mean, if you want some real entertainment, get newspapers.com and go back to the 1800s, early 1900s and read the obituaries.
Yeah, or do this. I really enjoy doing this. I've had a handful of like really old people's birthdays in the last year that are related to me. I use newspapers.com and I go back and I find them in the newspapers.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious because it's, normal people. It's like, this is so fun. It's like Lois got third place in the doily stitching contest of, in Macon County for, the year 1931. And it's so fun though. You get 4 or 5 of those and the stories that they tell based on these little tiny snippets of oddities that you find. Oh man, it's so fun.
I was actually watching a YouTube video the other day of a man exploring an abandoned house in the woods that he had found that had been just abandoned in the 80s. It had all the furniture and everything, and he didn't know anything about the person, and he found one little medical paper that had a name and a date on it, and I got it in a frame. I was able to pause it, and with that, I was able to find the man's that had died, when he died, how he died, his entire life, and I posted it in the YouTube. Like, this is who lived there. This is how they died.
Oh, really?
This is what they were into. Yeah, I just went down a rabbit hole for like 2 hours finding everything out about this man that lived in this house that this guy was exploring and posted it so that nobody would read it. And it would just disappear in the wave of comments in the comment section of that YouTube video. I need to find better things to do with my time. But yeah, in the obituaries of like late 1800s, 1900s, like today, it's like Gary passed away on August 11th, 2023. He was a dad. Burial will be, but in the 1800s, not early 1900s, it's like Gary was crushed by a large boulder out there behind Skaggs Creek by the tall oak tree on the right side of it. Boulder crushed his fucking head. And we had to scrape his tongue off the backside of the rock after they moved it. By the way, he did have herpes. We found that out when we were doing the autopsy. So that's crazy. Gary's burial will be at this time. Today we're talking about Belle Gunness. And Belle Gunness was born as Brynhild Paulsdatter Storset. And she was born in, get ready for this, she was born in the Innbygda village in the municipality of Selbu in Sør-Trøndelag, Norway, on November 11th, 1859. And I know that all sounds like a place from Star Wars, where Han Solo would absolutely shoot first, but it's actually quite beautiful. The Innbygda village in the municipality of Selbu in Sør-Trøndelag, Norway. Beautiful place. Snowy.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Very beautiful. Innbygda is a small, isolated village that even in 2024 only has a population of 2,400. In 1859, it was probably around 500. Snowy much of the time there. The winters are bitter cold, and the peak of summers often only reach about 57 degrees Fahrenheit. So, that being said, Innbygda is a cozy-looking little place. Picture like Aspen, Colorado's less successful, less flashy little brother. Like if Aspen had a kid that ended up just being into fishing and hunting, like that is kind of in Innbygda in 2024.
So it's kind of the rich kid who doesn't want to indicate that he's rich, so he's the one that sets out and joins the Peace Corps or like wears just Patagonia.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. A lot of Patagonia.
Yeah.
A lot of Patagonia swim trunks that come up just like right past your genitals. I don't know why that's a thing with boys today. Like, I guess fashion trends do circle. We're in the 80s now. with
Yeah, we
fashion
are.
trends for boys. Yeah, it is like today in 2024. It's kind of a hot spot for tourists that are into skiing. So you can imagine the kind of clientele. Like, do you know any middle-class people that are into skiing? I don't.
Not really, unless they grew up skiing and it was just sort of
I
like,
don't know anybody that's into skiing.
well, you got to live somewhere where you've got really big mountains. That helps with that.
I knew a girl in my early 20s that was into skiing, but that was in the back of a GMC Envoy. And no snow was involved.
Wow. I don't even know what that means. I don't want to know, though. Is it like a field party?
Anywhere you wanted her to be.
Oh,
She could ski anywhere. Didn't matter.
okay.
Get her a natty light and a hot dog, or a glizzy, as they call it. And she'll ski anywhere. She's a real classy lady. I
Nice.
think I loved her. But, yeah, just rich, pompous assholes that go skiing. I've only ever been skiing once in my life, and that was at some place. I went with a church group one time to some place that was in like the middle of a hot, I don't even remember what, might have been Indiana or Ohio. Perfect. I don't remember. It was like not natural snow. They sprayed it
Yeah.
on the side of like a cattle field mountain.
Yep.
And I'm not good at skiing. I always
Let
pizza
me
when I'm
ask you-
supposed to French fry.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm confident that you went skiing in jeans.
I was in jeans. You're right, but I had sweats underneath them.
Okay. So you
Or
had
long
wet.
johns. Probably long johns.
So you had wet jeans and wet long johns
Yes.
the whole time. Okay.
Yes.
Just sort of I knew that. For some reason I knew it.
A Ralph Lauren sweater.
Yep. And you had Rosignol rental skis. That's probably.
Does it matter?
Not really.
The kind of skis. Like, what's the difference in a... So you go skiing pretty regularly? Is that true?
I snowboard. So yeah, I like this last year. I took my kids up and they got on the mountain for the first time. As far as sliding down and doing stuff.
Skiing and snowboarding just feels to me like the widest pastime ever. Like, even if you take the snow out.
What's really funny about it is if we're going off really extreme racial generalizations, it takes a lot of balance, which if we're going off racial generations, black people are better at that stuff than white people. So
Yeah, and
you'd
how many
think that-
black people do you see on that mountain?
Well, it's also Idaho. So how many black people
That's
do
fair.
I see
That's fair.
anyway? You know, we do have quite a big immigrant population, you know, people from other countries. Kenya, we got a lot of Kenyans, but they're more on like they're in the foothills running around, just running around rather than skiing. I'm going to stop right there.
Okay, yeah. That would be good.
Mexicans, we got a lot of Mexicans, but they're like kind of just
Yeah,
down on
just
the
stop. I've got to
trails.
pay my mortgage. So,
Hiking the trails down behind what kind of the border area between Oregon and Idaho. They don't make it
Good
all the way up to
climbers.
ski. Yeah. They're all in jeans anyway, so they're not going to ski.
Belle's parents were Paul Peterson Storset and Berit Olsdatter Storset. Her dad, Paul, was a stonemason in the winter and a farmer in the summer. He raised cattle, sheep, and goats and grew barley, oats, and potatoes. Leased his land from the Storset farm, which is how they got their last name, which is interesting. And leasing a farm, that just means he would grow these crops, this barley, oats, potatoes, and then he would give a percentage of those crops to the owner of the farm that he was farming on. That's how that worked. Now, Belle, she was the youngest of 8 kids. They were all very poor family.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, it's interesting. Do you know how those names come about? Like their last names and stuff? Like my last name.
In this case, it was because they were leasing a farm from the Storset farm. That's how they ended up with their last name.
But her name was Brynhild Paulstatter Storset, right?
Yes.
So her given last name is because she was Paul's daughter. That's why it's Paulstatter.
Paulstatter.
Like my real last name,
I hadn't even
Swenson.
thought about that. That's really funny.
Yeah. My real last name, Swenson, is because my lineage comes from somebody who was Sven's son. So that's how you get all those daughters, those datters. Especially like if you go and look at like CrossFit, there's like always some like 3 or 4 ultra machine women that are like Olga Nyman's daughter. And that's why, because they're the daughter of
Is that just the
Norman.
Norwegian thing? Because how do you describe my last name, Chungus? My real last name, Chungus.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, it's definitely part of that culture over there. I think it bleeds over multiple countries. And last time we tried to do the whole where's Norway, Holland, all that stuff, we got blasted.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, draw a circle over all those countries, and they kind of all do the same thing. And we're going to get blasted anyway, so.
Yeah. Belle started helping around the farm at a very young age. One of her main jobs was to gather spruce sticks for the fireplace. They were poor, so, and being poor got Belle bullied, particularly her job as the spruce twig collector. That job got her the nickname from the other kids, Snarkovistpala.
Of course.
Which roughly translate to Paul's twig daughter. Oh, shit, bro. I swear to God. Let some little bastard call me a Snarkovistpala. I'd go through the fucking roof, dude.
Ugh, I know.
Fortunately, the kids when I was in elementary school just called me faggot. Try and kiss one male gym teacher on the mouth one time and it ruins 3rd grade the whole year, I swear to God.
You know, they really did call me that. A lot of jocks called me that in high school, like out in the open.
I could see you being confused for gay. Jess shaking her head too.
Okay, but I added a little fuel to the fire in high school.
And I don't know, super offensive. I don't know if you saw what she just did. You didn't see it. She went limp wrist on you. Because I
talk with my hands.
Yeah, you kind of are limp wrist. No offense,
I have some effeminate qualities, I'll admit. But I added fuel to the fire. I was in line. Well, leading up to this, I had done some things. And I was in line. I remember one time in particular, I was in line at the pizza truck outside, just up, the road out front of the high school, getting pizza for lunch. And this jock came up. He was like, "Hey, faggot," and I was like, "Haha, that's funny. Why? Yeah, funny." And he's like, "Yeah. I mean, anybody who calls their 4-man choir the gay chordsman, faggot." And I was like, "It's funny, huh? It's funny because you get it because I called it the gay chordsman." And he's like, "Yeah, faggot, I get it." And this is the 90s, and I thought it was funny. I called my a cappella group the gay chordsman. We literally sang songs at the talent show, and they introduced us as the gay chordsman and in front of the whole school. I'm doing this in the 90s, and I'm like, this is funny, huh, guys? And they're like, "Yeah, this is funny." I did that.
Let me ask you this. Did you ever have a point, like when you were growing up, where you wondered if you were gay?
Never. Not a one. I was so enamored with women, and I'm not saying that as like a way to avoid like any homosexual tendencies. I have been confidently circumspect about women for as long as I can remember.
Well, I wasn't never not turned on by women. I just didn't know what the word bi meant. So like, I remember distinctly in the 8th grade, I was really worried, like, am I gay? Because like, now you just realize you can acknowledge when another male is an attractive human being. That doesn't mean you're gay. It just means you can see. I didn't understand the difference between the two. And I remember I so distinctly remember, it's so vivid. I'm not going to say who my friend was because he probably wouldn't have, but we were standing on his back porch looking out over the road and the woods. And I was like, man, I'm really like, I don't know if I'm gay or not. And my buddy was like, we were the same age. He's like, I'm kind of going through that too. Like I'm trying to, and you're just, you're going through puberty. You don't know what's going on. Everything's a mess. You're just trying to figure this out. And we had a talk and at the end of the talk, we were like, "Oh, nope, I don't guess we're gay." And he's happily married now with kids, and I'm happily married now with kids. So, we ended up blowing each other just to make sure I didn't care for it. And I don't think he cared for it. I'm kidding. We didn't blow each other, but yeah, we worked it out right there together. It was like, well, I like so-and-so, we'll say Tiffany. And he's like, "Yeah, she's hot. So I'm not gay, right?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, but so-and-so, the dude, I know that he's also attractive." And he's like, "I'm aware of that as well. Are we gay?"
I can just see you're on the back porch and you're talking about this. You got your gray sweats on and some hard on, and you're just like brrrt, brrrt, on the banister posts, just tick, 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 tick. I don't know
we
if
were
I'm
in
gay.
8th grade. It was like that 24/7. You have an erection from 6th grade to 23. Well, that doesn't mean anything. But I remember just working it out with my buddy there. Spent like a solid hour just talking it through. Are we gay? I don't know. This is kind of gay that I feel this way, but I also like girls. And then we decided, no, we're not gay. We're not gay. And then I never thought about it again until just now.
I think it's a good sign of just having healthy sexuality to be able to recognize beautiful people in general. I don't think it's a kink. I don't think it's a quirk. Like, Luther is a beautiful man. Have you noticed how beautiful Luther is?
Yeah.
He really is.
Reminds me of like Michael B. Jordan, the actor Michael Jordan.
Yeah, but better, if I may say, even. Like, I feel like anyway, for anyone that's wondering, Luther is one of our oft repeated backdoor accessors through 1159
They're in the Never Daily podcast. There's a plug.
They're in the Never Daily.
You'll hear Luther on there.
Yeah, Luther. So anyway. Yeah.
Anyways, so she's getting picked on for being Paul's twig daughter. They're calling her mean names like Snarkovistala. Yeah. In 1873, when she's 13 years old, Belle begins working as a dairymaid for a neighbor that lived on a neighboring farm named Rod. And Rod would later describe her as a diligent human being that in all ways behaved well. This is kind of in conflict with what other people say after all of her crimes later come out. That's a problem when you're trying to research Belle Gunness, is differentiating between rumor and gossip and the truth. Half the people will say, no, she was a very well-behaved young lady, never got into trouble, very sweet. And then the other half is like, oh, she was a terror, a liar, a demonic child. Like, it's hard to, and this is also the 1800s.
I was going to say, do the math on a couple of those things. It's 1873.
Yeah.
There's a neighbor named Rod.
Yeah.
And
Roddy
has... Or Rhoda.
This is a Norwegian name. Rhoda. Rodde is how it's spelled.
Rhoda is asked his opinion in 1873 on the neighbor's 13-year-old daughter. Do the math on that one. Say he's probably positive. Overwhelmingly positive about her. So.
In an isolated little kind of, at this time, farming community.
Yeah.
In the mountains.
Yep.
June 1874, so the following year. At 14 years old, Belle is confirmed at the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Norway by Pastor Agaton Hanstein. Now, being confirmed, if you're wondering what that means, it just means you get up there in front of all the people there at the church, and you're like, I'm super serious about the baptism thing I just did. I'm not kidding. This isn't a phase like that whole emo thing. That's all being confirmed is.
Yeah.
And we'll find out later that she wasn't super serious about it. She actually ended up being a super serial killer. Killing it. I am. Around 1876, when she's 16 years old, Nellie, her sister, who was actually born Olina. So Nellie, Belle's sister, who is 10 years older than her, she migrates from Norway to Chicago in the United States. And once there, Nellie met a man named John R. Larson and married him, and they settled down. So keep in mind, Belle, she's still in Norway here. Her sister is now living in the United States, 10 years older than her, setting up life. And in 1877, so the following year, when Belle is 17 years old, and this is a rumor. What I'm going to say, I want to preface this. This is just a rumor. We don't know if it's true. There's no documentation to support this. This is just word by mouth from the little village that she lived in. And keep in mind that this rumor came out in like 1908 when they're going back, trying to trace her life. Like, where did this woman come from? So this all comes out, almost 30 years later. But there's a rumor that when she's 17, Belle gets pregnant by the son of a wealthy landowner. So this poor girl gets pregnant by a little rich boy. And getting knocked up by a rich person when you're a poor person is called the old California gotcha. That's what they call it. However, while attending a dance just a few months after getting pregnant, the same man lured Belle to a quiet spot outside of the dance and beat her until she miscarried the baby. And luring a pregnant woman that you knocked up to a quiet place and then beating her baby out of existence is called the old Alabama gotcha.
The strategy there is flawed, because I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if I were that rich man, I would have attended the dance and lured her to a noisy spot and beat her until she miscarried. Because if you do it in a quiet spot, then everybody can hear what's happening.
That's a very good point.
I would have gone.
You got to keep in mind, though,
spot.
everybody is already in the noisy spot.
I know, but just imagine you're like, hey, Belle, do you want to dance? Footloose, footloose, kick off, you punch.
Well, I also want to point out it's probably so loud, not even because of the music, but all of the wooden shoes hitting the floor at the same time.
Yeah. Clogging up the airwaves, they like to say.
And I know you love cloggers. I know that part probably just got you rock hard. Oh,
Yeah.
I love cloggers, and that's a callback to one episode where you dated a clogger.
Yeah, I was engaged to her. Glad it didn't work out.
The more we talk to you, the more white you get. I don't know why Luther wants to talk to you.
I don't know either. I don't know.
I enjoy skiing and cloggers.
I don't enjoy abusive cloggers. I found that out. I've got some standards.
Now, the young man that beat her baby out of existence was never arrested or charged for doing this because he was a rich little daddy's boy. Some people reported that after this incident, Belle's personality changed drastically and for the worst, which isn't surprising if all this is true. However, the big takeaway from this story is shortly after this incident, that same young man died of an intestinal ailment that had symptoms strikingly similar to arsenic poisoning.
Oh.
That being said, like I mentioned before, no documentation of any of these events exists. This is hearsay. Whether or not it's true, we don't know, but I wanted to point that out.
But
that
also,
is what they say happened.
Just a little foreshadowing maybe on the way that guy died. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also, to add to what you said, how much documentation was there really in the 1870s in Innbygda village in the municipality of Selbu in Sør-Trøndelag, Norway?
Good point. Also, how many people's babies were just dying because of like natural things like tuberculosis or
wolves,
poverty, wolves. Yeah.
Winter bees.
Yeah. All those more common ailments.
Can't see without his glasses. 1878, when she's 19 years old, she begins working for a family on a very large farm. And she does this so she can start saving enough money to move to New York City. She wants to go to America like her sister Nellie. And after doing this for 3 years, in 1881, at 22 years old, Belle has finally saved enough money to migrate to the United States. Now, she uses money she saved up from working on the farm, as well as a little financial help from her sister Nellie, who was already in Chicago. And a little side note, the journey to America during these times from Norway was absolutely terrible for anybody, actually. This is one quote from one poor bastard who had to migrate via ship to the United States. For breakfast, there was always sweet tea without milk and dry, hard biscuits, and the same for supper. There was butter, but it was so rancid that we could not digest it. For dinner, it was soup with meat, but there was no taste to the soup, and the meat was as salty as herring. One day, we had salted fish with a dash of soup, but it was inedible for most of us, and we just ended up dumping our portions into the sea. The bathrooms on this were open to the sea and the elements, so they didn't have doors on them, and everybody just shit, and the shit would fall into the bottom of the ship and pile up. It was an absolute mess. There were horrendous conditions, a lot of seasickness, vomit everywhere. Bad way to get to the U.S.
But now, interesting. Did you say that she saved up her money in 1881 to go to the United States?
Yes.
Interesting.
Oh, fucking hell.
Because I know of some money from 1881 in particular that
right.
Naturally, all of when you think about
mm-hmm.
when you think about the value of coins that you could save.
Don't think about it. That's crazy.
Obviously, the 1881 $3 gold piece comes to mind. Now, this one is unique in that there were really low mintage numbers. So if you're holding on to one of these right now, stop holding on to it. Get it to Sotheby's because you're looking at a highly valuable denomination.
Get rid of it. Yeah.
Also has a lot of historical contents. I mean, I don't want to get into it, but the context behind this one, minted during this period.
You said you didn't want to get into it.
They're the interest of their historical context, representing a fascinating era in U.S. history. Collectors often value coins not just for their material worth, as we all know, but for the stories and the historical periods they represent. And I believe that 1881 is, it's a banger as far as the year. Yeah. Check out those $3 gold coins you're sitting on and retire early. That's all I have to say. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, condition and preservation.
Yeah.
Preservation is a factor, but
very important. Preservation.
I mean, don't want to get into the the gold content, the intrinsic value of the gold in the coin, but
it's a lot.
That's a given. I feel like I sidelined things.
Yeah.
So.
Jess, do you want to take over as co-host?
Please.
No? Okay.
Please? Please, Jess.
Look, what I'm getting at is this traveling from wherever you are to the United States. It was terrible. Bad food, bad bathrooms. Everybody was sick. It all honestly sounds incredibly close to just flying Spirit Airlines today. Now, when Belle was processed through immigration at Castle Garden in Manhattan in New York City, remember, at this time, her name is Brynhild. Brynhild, that's when she changes her name to Belle Peterson. Belle Peterson. And that's a shame, really, because I always thought Brynhild was a beautiful name.
Yeah.
I thought that was a beautiful name. A lot of Brynhilds in my graduating class. We had a Brynhild hog watcher.
Sure you did.
Smelled like shit, but beautiful eyes. Beautiful eyes. One of the reasons I realized I wasn't gay. Because I could look through the aura of shit. There's a beautiful woman there. Brynhild Hogwatcher. I'm just realizing her last name. That was her job. She had Down syndromes, and her job at the farm was to just look at the pigs.
Just look.
She had to look at them, make sure they wasn't trying to get away or devise plans or whatever. Beautiful wide set eyes.
Wide field of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After changing her name to Belle, she travels to Chicago to join her sister Nellie. Nellie, like I said, she's been here for many years now. She's established herself. She's married. She's got a home, a job. Moves in with her sister Nellie, and while living with her sister there in Chicago, she gets a job as a domestic servant, which means she's just doing laundry, sewing, cleaning homes, just a housemaid. Now, from the very beginning, Nellie, Belle's sister, later said that Belle was money hungry, loved money. All she thought about was money. Very materialistic, wanted to have a high status, and all that shit was very important to her. Only thing she gave a fuck about was money. And the only time she was interested in a man is if he could provide money or a decent house to live in. And after growing tired of that job as a domestic servant, she gets a job as a butcher at a butcher shop. Strikingly similar, this story, this part of it anyway, to Catherine Knott. This is really just the American Catherine Knott, the Norwegian-American Catherine Knott. Belle Gunness is.
Yeah.
And I should also point out, like Catherine Knott, Belle was built like a brick shithouse.
I was going to say, that would be a fight for the ages. That would be a fight for it would be like watching two titans fight. If only Dana White could have been alive during that time.
Only man that could hit a woman harder than Belle Gunness. Dana White.
Ouch.
24-year-old Belle Gunness, she does eventually meet a 29-year-old man by the name of Mads Ditlev Anton Sorensen. And the two of them, they hit it off. Now, Mads, his occupation was a night watchman for the Mandel Brothers department store that was located on the corner of State and Madison Streets. And doing that job brought him home $15 a week, which is equivalent to $565 a week today. Now, the Mandel Brothers department store, the building is still there. It's now a Burlington coat factory and a TJ Maxx. So that's exciting.
And they don't even have night watchmen there anymore. You can just steal stuff.
Just take it. Yeah. The only thing that'll happen is somebody will put the video on Twitter.
But I was today years old when I found out that when you're in TJ Maxx, you can't try to steal stuff with the cart because the pole is to stop you from stealing using the cart. So you have to just use your arms to steal.
It's actually what ended up getting poor Hog Watcher. She's in prison now. She didn't have the facilities to be like, oh, I've got to carry this out with my arms.
Yeah.
So they just caught her at the door, just trying to get that cart through the door.
Bless her heart.
And I got to say, if you're stealing from a TJ Maxx, you really need to get your shit together because that's the only place where you can buy swim shorts in December. Or maybe an Abercrombie & Fitch sweater that has one little hole in it.
Yeah.
Mads, this man that Belle had, in her Belle Gunness way, fallen in love with, was by all accounts a very kind, sweet, caring, and loving man. Everybody that knew Mads says this about him. And I don't know why a lot of men like this end up with women like this. It's very common. I can think of like 3 couples off the top of my head right now where this is the dynamic where it's a very kind of submissive, loving, sweet-natured man with a just overbearing woman that could absolutely put him in a Kimura in about 3 seconds.
Bless his heart. Bless his heart. Bless his heart, I guess.
March 17th, 1884, 25-year-old Belle Gunness marries Mads at the Evangelical Lutheran Bethania Church on Grand Avenue and Carpenter Street. And this is when she becomes Belle Sorensen. Belle Sorensen. Now, right after they got married, Belle wants children. She had a lot of trouble getting pregnant in the beginning. We don't know if it was him or her. We do know that she does have trouble bearing children. And this desire for children actually ends her relationship with her sister Nellie. Because at one point, Nellie lets Belle keep her daughter, her 4-year-old daughter by the name of Olga. Her 4-year-old daughter, Olga, stays with Belle for a month and a half straight. A month and a half. And at the end of the visit, when Nellie was like, hey, I'd like my daughter back, please. Belle insisted that Nellie let her adopt Olga. Because she was like, Nellie, you've already got 5 kids. You've got an extra here. Don't be a bitch.
Yeah.
But Nellie was like, no, I think I want all of my children. I want my kid back. I had to carry that thing for 9 months and push it out of my vagina. And I would like to have it back. And she took the kid back, and this ruined her relationship with her sister. When she had the audacity to want her child back. Because the way Belle looked at it was like, you got 5. I don't have any. Regardless, you got a bunch of them, and I don't have any. So let me have this little Olga. But she wasn't having it. And that ruined their relationship. They stopped talking after that.
Tales old as time as far as, familial rifts go. It's who gets the kids between siblings.
1886. 2 years after getting married, Belle and Mads buy a candy shop that was located at 318 Grand Avenue. It was on the street level floor of a 2-story wood frame building. They also got an apartment above it. It was kind of the same setup as like the Callengers had for the shoe store.
Yeah. It's called an ADU today, accessory dwelling unit.
Were you on the business below and live up top?
Yeah.
Well, that building, that 2-story wood frame building has long been gone. And that place is now a gym, which is kind of poetic. Honestly, there's nothing less of a candy store than a gym.
Unless you're Planet Fitness. And they've got
Planet
pizza.
Fitness where they have Pizza Friday.
Yeah. That's weird.
The only thing they'll call people out on there is being too fit.
Yeah, the lunk alarms. Weird place.
So they got this candy store. Now, aside from candy, they also sold tobacco and cigars. newspapers and magazines, as well as stationery. That being said, it was not a successful business because by 1887, just a year after they bought the place, it burns down. Now, Belle claimed it was because an oil lantern misfired, didn't work right, malfunctioned.
There you
An
go.
oil lantern malfunctioned.
There you go.
That being said, there was some suspicion of arson, but they couldn't prove it. The couple did, however, get a hearty insurance payout. I couldn't find the exact amount for this insurance fraud. I do have a bunch for the future insurance frauds, but I know they got a nice payout. During the investigation, there was no oil lantern found in the ruins of the business.
Really?
And
That's
this is kind of
odd.
Is it? I don't think an oil lantern had anything to do with this fire.
Well, I'd agree with you there. I was kind of saying it ironically.
Oh, okay. Now, with the money that they got from this insurance fraud, the couple buys a 3-story bay-windowed house that was located at 620 Alma Street. Not only is that house gone, the whole goddamn street is pretty much gone. Now it's just a little bitty it's called West Alma Street, and it's like a quarter of a mile long. That whole area is a residential neighborhood, so figuring out where this house would have been today is almost impossible without going to Chicago libraries and getting deeds to lands or whatever you got to do and figuring out where the road was. It doesn't matter around this time.
Hey, wait. I'm sorry. I'm about to pee. I have to pee so bad.
Go take pee.
I'm going to go pee really quick. I had been up since 7:30 drinking too many things. Be right back.
Okay. Okay.
A few moments later.
Now, around the same time, Belle suddenly shows up with a small child by the name of Lucy.
Just shows up with a kid.
We do not know where Lucy came from. Nobody knows.
Okay.
We actually don't know much about Lucy at all, and you'll see why. Belle claimed, she told neighbors and everything, that she adopted Lucy from a wealthy family back in Chicago. Or in Chicago. They're still right in Chicago. Meanwhile, Mads gets a job with the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. He's now only making $12 a week, which is $452 in today's money. In 1891, a couple living near Belle and Mads, they were named the Olsons, the Olson couple. They have an 8-month-old infant daughter by the name of Jenny Olson. And it turns out, unfortunately, that the mother is dying. Now, these are neighbors to Belle and Mads who are living here at Alma Street.
Mm-hmm.
And Belle begs the dying woman to let her take Jenny Olson off of her. She says, hey, I'll take care of the little girl. Let me raise her. And the dying woman allows it. She says, you just have to swear, make a pledge that you'll love her and take care of her. The father, he didn't fight it at first. This is the late 1800s. The idea of a man raising a child, that's a woman's job. A man can't raise a baby.
Isn't that funny? Like it seems like one of the ironic twists is it you would think that men from that era would have been like, I could do it better than a woman, you know?
Yeah.
Because it lines up with the way that they thought, but bags
fortunately,
are hot air.
we as a society have progressed in that thought process. Unfortunately, the judicial and court systems have not.
No, they have not. No, they have
not.
not.
Now, like I said, the dad, he didn't fight it at first, but a few years later, he does try to regain custody of Jenny Olson, but he loses. And Jenny Olson from this point on is Belle Gunness by that point. I do want to point out something. On several websites, you will see a picture of a person that is claimed by the websites to be a picture of a young Belle Gunness. It is not Belle Gunness. You'll see a young, pretty woman with obviously blonde hair. That is not Belle Gunness. That picture is actually a teenage Jenny Olson, this child that she's just taken, this baby.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
I was going to say, because the Belle Gunness I know,
Not attractive.
No, she looks like the Kool-Aid Man.
She does. Or I think she reminds me of, did you ever watch Rocko's Modern Life?
No.
You know the frog neighbors? That's what Belle Gunness looked like, Rocko's neighbors.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
I could see you didn't watch that. You were watching He-Man because it was the fucking 1700s. Very wide mouth. Looked like she could like eat a deer whole.
Yeah, she's a... Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The frog lady. Okay.
The big heads.
Yeah.
That was their name.
Big heads. I never saw it.
With that very wide frog. And I think they were actually supposed to be frogs, I believe.
They look frog-like. I mean, the coloring and the lips and...
God damn it, I loved Rocko's Modern Life so much.
Why don't you watch it still?
I do. I have it on DVD.
Oh.
Whenever my 9-year-old was probably 1 year old, I'm like, I want her to watch good cartoons. So I went on Amazon and bought like Rocko's Modern Life, Ren and Stimpy, Doug, Rugrats, Hey Arnold, Cat Dog, Ira Monsters, all the cartoons that I loved growing up, and she's never watched a single one of them. So
Yeah.
she ended up instead watching fucking Hilda. That's what she loves.
Hilda.
Yeah.
It's like Christmas toys. You buy all the toys and then they end up playing with the box. You can't really tell what they're going to get into. Like, I've thrown so many shows at my kids from my era, and like even now, like, you know, we're like we kind of babysit the shows. We're like, that one, I don't like that one. Where my kids landed right now, Muppets, Fraggles, and Little House on the Prairie. I don't even get it.
That is weird.
I'm like, why do you like Little House on the Prairie? And they like it for different reasons. Mona likes how
it feels so Mormon.
Well, Mona likes how pretty it is and how simple their life was. Bean likes Nellie. She says she's mean. I'm like, oh no.
Jess, we were actually talking before it started. Jess, actually also a huge fan of Little House on the Prairie. And when I asked her why, she said it was because of the lack of diversity.
It sounds about right. Belle Gunness reminds me of Nellie's mom, actually. That kind of a big old brassy blowhard throwing her husband around, the shopkeeper.
I've never seen the show.
Oh, we watch it and just wait till they show the mercantile. Nellie's mom. She's Belle Gunness.
Well, my point that I was making here is like, if you any picture you see that's claiming it's Belle Gunness, if you see it and you're like, oh, that's an attractive woman, that's not Belle Gunness then.
Yeah.
That's not Belle Gunness. She was curvy though.
Yeah, but
which I'm down with. I'm all about it. Like, I would definitely like a 20-year-old kent-chungus if I was drinking at a party and it's like last call and it's like, oh shit, I'm going home alone and I saw Belle Gunness in the corner drinking Golden Schlager. I'd be like, fuck it. Come on, Belle.
Remember those cheap metal compasses that you used in school where you'd like clip your pencil into it and then draw a circle?
Yeah.
I feel like that's how God created Belle. It's like, I'm just going to keep poking the paper and drawing circles. And that's how he's like, give her some shoulders, circle. Give
Extra
her
shoulders.
Abdomen, circle. May even give her a thorax, circle. You know?
I mean, up until her like, late 30s, early 40s, she was shaped like an hourglass. She had a real figure.
But I also feel like if you took all of her clothes off and then felt her, although she's very robust size-wise, I feel like she's firm, like not doughy, not
good
doughy.
to cuddle with.
No, I felt it'd be like hugging a wrestling mat after it's been rolled up, or a steer.
I would agree with that. Yeah, with boobs.
Yeah, with boobs. So there's something that keeps you around. You stick around. You're like, it's a wrestling mat, but it's got boobs. So you'll finish the Netflix show with her.
Yeah, that picture of the pretty young lady, blonde, that's Jenny Olsen, the kid that she took from the dying woman. 1893, an immigrant from Denmark by the name of Peter Gunness rents a room from Belle and her husband Mads for a very short period of time. Now, Peter Gunness, he was a good-looking blonde dude with a pointed beard and mustache. And there's a picture of him, and he was a good-looking dude, described as a Viking of a man, just a very manly-looking, attractive man. Belle was really into him. I mean, she really liked him. She'd have taken him all the way to the base if he'd allowed it.
Tell you what, that's a small world right there. Talk about names and what are the odds that his last name was Gunness? That's a small
Yeah,
world.
that's going to come up later. That's why I bring this up, because eventually he moves back out of their house and on with his life and goes on and gets married, has some kids. But just keep this in the back of your head. Peter Gunness that stays with them in 1893 for a short period of time.
Okay.
He's going to come back up, as you probably have already, you already suspect.
Small world.
In that same year of 1893, Lucy, remember the kid that she had just showed up with?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, where'd you get that fucking baby? She's like, I got him from a wealthy family. Lucy just goes missing, just vanishes. Belle tells the neighbors whenever they ask about where Lucy is, she goes, oh, I sent her back to live with her biological parents. And the matter was never looked into any further. It's 1893. What are you going to do?
Weird.
Just a kid. Kids just vanished then. This is around the time Albert Fish is prowling. So.
And wolves. Like all these people came over from a place where wolves were that's actually a very logical conversation piece. Is where'd the baby go? Wolves. Okay.
I don't really know.
Is that butter moldy? Those are the two things where's your baby? Wolves. And then something about butter.
Now, between 1896 and 1898, so in this 2-year span, Belle and Mads have 3 more children. Now, unfortunately, we do not concretely know where these children came from. We don't know if one of them was one of Belle's biological children, if she actually ended up getting pregnant, if they were adopted, if they were stolen, if she had bought them off of a poor woman. We do not know how these children came into their possession. We do know their names were Axel, Carolyn, and Myrtle. And unfortunately, Axel and Carolyn both died in infancy. On August 25th, 1896, Carolyn died at 3 months old of acute colitis, which affects the gastrointestinal system. I do want to point out that Belle did have a small life insurance policy, and she was able to cash that out. And I do want to point out that acute colitis, which affects the gastrointestinal system, does have symptoms similar to some poisonings.
Interesting. Also, medical field from the time, not that great.
No.
Not that great.
No. April 11th, 1898, Axel, the little boy, dies at 5 months old of hydrocephalus. Now, this is maybe one of those where Belle didn't do it because it was hydrocephalus, but maybe she took him on or bought him or whatever because she saw a sick child, and then she got life insurance policy on him so she could. I don't know. This is all speculation because obviously this is the late 1800s. We don't know for sure.
Now, and that is an illness that she could have seen from
absolutely
3 blocks away.
Mastermind head.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd see it.
You would. Interesting. Okay.
So I like to stay linear on TCK plot-wise and timeline-wise, but yeah, this first death of this little girl happened in 1896, second death 1898. But between that and 1897, specifically on Friday evening on October 1st of 1897, a man shows up at the Sorensen home that introduces himself as an agent for the Yukon Mining and Trading Company. Now, he claims they're looking for employees to mine for gold in Alaska. Going door to door looking for employees for the Yukon Mining and Trading Company. Now, there's a lot of yada, yada, yada in this part of the story in the book. A lot of law jargon and blah, 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 blah. I'm going to simplify what happens here greatly.
Okay.
This man has an offer for Mads. He says, hey, come to Alaska, be a miner for the Yukon Mining and Trading Company for 1 year, and you'll get rich. You'll get a percentage of any gold you find. You'll get stock in the company, and you'll also have a paycheck, a weekly paycheck. Now, Belle, who was all about money and never legitimately cared for another living being in her entire life, was all about Mads leaving if that meant they were going to get rich. So they agree. Mads agrees, and he signs the paperwork. There was one catch-up. All they needed to do was invest a large sum of money to cover Mads' supplies for the year. So they did, $700 to be exact, which is equivalent to $25,000 today. You already see where this is going.
Yeah.
This is a scam. This was all just a 1900s version of a stranger messaging you on Facebook.
Yeah. Right.
Mads, thinking he now has a new job and he's going to get rich, quits his job at the railroad. Long story short, as you already see where this is going,
Yes.
It was a scam. They lost pretty much everything in the scam. They were out a shitload of money. Broke again. In 1898, after they did go to court over it, they did win their case in court, but by the time they had to pay court fees and some other stuff, they ate their dick on this.
Darn.
In 1898, Mads returns to his job as the night watchman at the Mandel Brothers department store. And keep in mind, they're broke now. They're desperate for money. Just so happens to be that on Tuesday, April 10th, 1900, that's when a fire breaks out in their Alma Street home after they had lived there for 3 years. Now, the firefighters were able to save the building for the most part, but they did lose a total of $650 worth of household items that were destroyed. Fortunately, they had insurance on it.
Let me ask you a question. Because you're kind of, I know you're hiding the ball, and that's part of podcasting. How many years into this so far, or at all, do you think it's even happened yet that she's figured things out, that she's started to figure things out?
I think she figured things out in...
I want to say the kid before the hydrocephalic was maybe the first time. Because she made money, and I wonder if she's like, okay.
I think she figured it out.
The candy store?
1886. The candy store.
Candy store.
The candy store.
Okay.
That's when I think the insurance fraud thing clicked.
Yeah.
Like, this is easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like I said, they lost $650 worth of household items. That's equivalent today to $24,000. They got a $24,000 check.
Okay.
On noon, Monday, July 30th, 1900. So just a few months after the fire. 46-year-old Mads Sorensen, her husband, drops dead. Jess shaking her head. She's like, yep, saw that coming.
Yep.
According to Belle, this is what happened. Now, he was working the night shift. He got home early that morning. And she said that he was complaining of a horrible headache. So he went upstairs and laid down. She went upstairs and gave him a dose of quinine powder, and then went back down to the kitchen to begin preparing for dinner. Now, I looked it up, and quinine powder was usually used for malaria. It's a malaria medicine. I don't know why she gave it to him for a headache, but she did. There's nothing illegal about having quinine powder. It's still used today for malaria.
Is
that's what she gave him.
Is that similar to the malaria powder called quinine?
Probably a lot like it.
Similar to
Probably
it,
a lot like it. It's a close relative.
Wonder if they have the same efficacy, maybe.
Probably they have efficacy.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
She says, hey, I went back downstairs to start cooking dinner. When I went back upstairs, he was dead. I don't know. He was just dead. Now, when the investigators get there, they do ask to see the paper that the quinine powder came in. She told him, I burned it. I just threw it in the fire. I didn't know he was going to die. I burned it. They don't question this. However, years later, after her horrible atrocities, in a May of 1908 issue of the Inter-Ocean newspaper, one of the neighbors that lived next door to them there on Alma Street distinctly remembered seeing Mads sitting on his front porch that morning at 10 a.m. This is just 2 hours before he's dead. Bouncing one of his daughters on his knee, smiling, laughing, and she said he was in good spirits and looked to be in great health. This is 2 hours before he drops dead.
That's suspicious.
Very suspicious, yes. And she's recalling this a few years later in May of 1908. She said, hey, I saw him that morning at 10 a.m., just 2 hours before he died. He was happy, didn't look like he had a headache to me, bouncing his daughter on his knee, smiling, laughing, playing with her, just being a good old dad. Just got off work, sitting on the porch, watching the morning, spending time with his family probably before he crashed. He worked third shift. Now, doctors assumed it was because he did have a bad heart. He had an enlarged heart. So they assumed either his heart had attacked him or he had had a stomach hemorrhage. Regardless, no autopsy was performed. By the way, I should probably point this out. And I don't know why this didn't throw up any big red flags to anybody. It just so happens that on the day of his death, July 30th, 1900, this was the one and only day that two life insurance policies were overlapping.
Oh. Okay.
It was the last day of a $2,000 life insurance policy and the first day of a $3,000 life insurance policy. So she got really lucky.
Yeah.
Really lucky. I mean, it's unfortunate he died, but of all the days he could have died, it was this one day where these two life insurance policies were overlapping.
That's the sweet spot right there. That's the sweet spot, as we call it in insurance fraud.
She gets a check for $5,000 for these two policies, which is equivalent today to $188,000.
God, I could use that.
God, the action figures I could buy.
The staff I could pay.
Would have all the Sega Genesis games.
I'd have all the edits I need. Ugh. One can only dream.
Buying everything on eBay that says CIB.
Chase just posted in the back door the boob job I could get. Oh wait, no, that was Jess. Never mind.
To be fair, everybody here needs a boob job but Jess.
Yeah.
So
I would love to see the quality of $180,000 boob job. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see, like, what are you getting for $180K that you're not getting when you that you're sacrificing when you get the $5K boob job? Yeah.
Well, it didn't work out well for Tara Reid.
It didn't. Yeah, she was like losing parts. Franken boobs.
On Thursday morning, August 2nd, 1900, Mads Ditlev Anton Sorensen, the sweet man that had dealt with Belle for many years now, is laid to rest beside his two infant children at the Forest Home Cemetery, where he still lays to this day. In November of 1901, so just a few months a little over a year later, with that $188,000, Belle buys a 48-acre farm an hour away from Chicago that was located on the outskirts of La Porte, Indiana, and she moves there with her remaining children, Jenny Olson, the one that she had taken from the dying woman, and Myrtle.
Okay.
Now, the house on the farm there that she bought that was on that farm, it was a 2-story red brick with 6 bedrooms.
That's big.
Large house, very like kind of plantation-y looking house.
Yeah.
Very Gucci. On each side of the house was an orchard. And this farm was located on what is now 144 West McClung Road. There is a lot of fighting on the internet about the exact location of her house. And I will say that after like 5 hours of research, I was able to pinpoint exactly where this is. It's 144 West McClung Road. And it turns out that it's a 2-story house. The top half is red. That house is actually built, if you look at 144 West McClung Road, that 2-story house with the red top half is actually built on the same foundation that Belle's house was on.
Oh, okay.
So that's exactly where her house was, where that house sits now. That house that she bought there before she had owned it was a brothel ran by a lady by the name of Maddie Altick. It was a whorehouse for high-rolling clientele coming in and out of Chicago. When Belle and her kids moved in, they pointed this out, it reeked of stale hooker perfume. When they moved in, and then Belle set forward cleaning and making that old whorehouse into a whore home.
Oh.
Like I said, today that house is no longer there. You'll find out why in part 2. And that entire area it's still mostly it's rural, it's woods, it's farmland, but there's a house that sits there now, and a few neighbors now as well. In February of 1902, Belle visits one of her so they've been living at this house for a few months. Belle goes and visits one of her cousins in Otter Tail County, Minnesota. And while she's there in Otter Tail County, Minnesota, she finds out, you remember Peter Gunness?
Yeah.
That dreamy blonde Viking that had rented the room from him years earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, he's living in Minneapolis. So somehow, we don't know how, she finds him and makes a special trip to Minneapolis and gets reacquainted with old Peter Gunness.
What a small world again.
Small world. Now, by this time in her life, Belle was described later this way by a man that knew her. Quote, she was a fat, heavy-featured woman with a big head covered in a mop of mud-colored hair.
Wow.
She had small eyes, huge hands and arms, and a gross body supported by feet that were grotesquely small.
Sounds like a salamander. It's a salamander. That is.
Regardless of the fact that she now looked like Hodor from Game of Thrones, somehow Belle Gunness, Belle, who is now Belle Sorensen still, gets Peter Gunness to fall in love with her. Now, one could make the argument that I would say this new 48-acre farm probably sweetened the deal a little bit for him.
Yeah, I would say.
Because keep in mind, Peter Gunness now has 2 daughters of his own. He had gotten married in the time that they had been away from each other to a woman named Jenny. They had a 5-year-old by the name of Swanhild. And unfortunately, Jenny, the mother, died giving birth to the second child, which they ended up also naming Jenny. So Peter Gunness is now a single father with 2 daughters, a 5-year-old named Swanhild, and an infant named Jenny. So yeah, his wife, Big Jenny, she had died while giving birth to little Jenny. And also, Belle has her own Jenny, Jenny Olsen. A lot of Jennies.
Yeah.
Anyways, Belle and Peter Gunness, they dated for 2 months while she stayed with her cousin there in Minneapolis, or there in Minnesota. And on April 1st of 1902, Belle Sorensen becomes Belle Gunness when she marries Peter Gunness in the First Baptist Church of La Porte, Indiana, and they're married by Reverend G.C. Moore. April 6, 1902, 5 days after they get married. 5 days after Peter Gunness and his 2 daughters move in with Belle on her farm there in La Porte, Indiana, Peter's infant daughter, Jenny, dies mysteriously.
Oh, man. Competition.
No autopsy was performed. Cause of death was just ruled as edema of the lungs. Water buildup in the lungs. Edema of the lungs.
I don't believe it.
Well, good, because that's not what happened. Jenny's little body is shipped back to Chicago and buried beside Belle's former husband, Mads, as well as her 2 other children. Belle Gunness now has her dream man without the nuisance of an infant. They're living on a huge, beautiful farm in La Porte, Indiana, with her own kids and one of Peter's. So they have now her, Peter Gunness, Jenny Olsen, Myrtle, and Swanhild.
Yeah, I don't believe it. Not going to believe it.
She's got a dream life up. She's got the man of her dreams. And she now has the name that will be written in history books up to this very day, Belle Gunness. Our story is just getting started, though, up. And that's where we'll pick back up at part 2 when Belle really starts fucking men up. She becomes just a Venus twat trap. A penis twat trap. She becomes a penis twat trap.
She's a juggernaut of
physically.
Death.
Yes.
Always. She's just. Well, I'm excited for this one. I enjoy myself a Gunness story. I don't know that I think this is one I was telling you before we started recording. I think that this is one that if your show was going to be known as a retrospective deep dive on things, having Gunness in your repertoire is always a good idea. Plus, not to set the bar too high for you, but I'm curious. What I enjoy about the way you do things is that you have a tendency to dispel myth where other podcasters might just gloss over it for sensational reasons. So,
in their defense, I've got a lot of time on my hands. So I don't know if you heard the part where I saw a YouTube video and did a deep dive on the life of a man that lived in a trailer in the woods.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
Well, so tomorrow we'll pick right back up where we left off.
Yes.
Belle Gunness. Tomorrow's a Saturday, but we're committed, right?
And then part 3
Saturday.
on Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
you got to call in.
Do you want me
the Lord,
to bring?
you're working.
I have another coin fact. I could either let you know now.
Thank you for joining TCK. You can go to 1159 media.
.com. Good job. 1159media.com or 1159plus.
1159plus.com. You can go to 1159mediaplus.com.
No, don't go there.
You can go to 1159.plus.com. But
Nope.
you can search 1159 Media in Google, and it will take you to where you need to go.
Yep.
You can also join us on Patreon and Supercast.
Sure.
It's called Supercast, isn't it?
It is. It's plus. We call it plus. We kind of we put lipstick on the pig and call it plus. That's our plus. Supercast is our plus. Patreons are still there, and it's a great place to be as well if you like Patreon or Apple Podcasts.
Putting lipstick on a pig is also what Belle called getting dizzied up.
Because she's a pig.
If you like this show, do rates and reviews at the things.
Yep. Do that.
Rate join us on Patreon.
RateThisPodcast.com/TCK.
Rate this podcast at /TCK.
No. Darn it. Just all. You know what? Try to just find us. You can do it.
Just type in 1159 Media. Type in True Crime Ken. I'm sure you'll find it there. But please join the Patreon. Please.
Okay.
Or the Supercast at 11 at truecrimekent.com.
If you want Kent to be able to have a lot of time in his day to do this stuff,
I've got to be able to. I've got to justify it to my wife. Yeah,
and I really need the help to pay him. I really do. Because
so if you want the show to keep happening, then help. Please.
Just, damn it.
I'm trying to remodel my house.
Yeah, I'm trying to help Kent remodel his house, I guess. I didn't know that.
And bye.
Now I do.
And goodbye.
Bye.
And I'll see you in part 2 of Belle Gunness, the big old bitch of LaPorte, Indiana.